parents threw me out as a child, and then expected everything from me when my grandparents died. Don't miss out on the fun. Hit subscribe button and join our community for more stories like this one. My friend who helped me set up this account has repeatedly asked me to post this story since I mentioned in my a post about how my parents hated me and only loved my sister. So I may as well tell it. I was born when my mother and father were only 17. It forced both of my parents to drop out of high school and each get a GED, so they could find work right away. My father especially was not happy about this because he had dreams of playing football in college, and instead he had to work at a gas station. He said to my face many times that I ruined his dream. My mother hardly raised me at all as she had to work too. They had a cranky old lady next door watch me most of the time. She wasn't so bad. She gave me more attention than my parents did. My father eventually managed to land a better job as a manager due to his experience running the gas station. It was right after that my mom got pregnant with my sister. I was 6 when she was born. I wasn't exactly shown much love before that. But once my sister came along, it was made pretty obvious to even my 6-year-old self that I was unwanted. The only ones who seemed to care were my paternal grandparents and somewhat my babysitter. And they were more like my parents because they treated me the way a little kid needed to be loved. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. And as my sister got older, it went from me sharing a bedroom with her to me kicked out of the room entirely. I slept on the couch for 2 years. And I barely had anything to my name other than clothes, school supplies, and an old Game Boy. When I was 10, my parents decided they were going to move away. But this move did not include me. I ended up actually being fine with this, as my grandparents had agreed to take me in. My life was instantly better. I got my own room again, and my grandparents gifted me a brand new N64 in 1996. That Christmas I got a Game Boy Pocket too. And there were a couple of other kids my age in the neighborhood I got to hang out with. We rode bikes, played video games, shot cans with pellet guns, built forts, and got dirty playing in the creek. You know, stuff a normal kid would enjoy. I was finally happy. As time went on, I grew up and eventually moved out. But later moved back in to help my grandparents' house as they were getting old and living off their retirement savings. So some rent money from me went a long way in paying the bills. My grandpa was the kind of person who'd wanted to build a bomb shelter during the Cold War, but never got around to it. He wanted to volunteer for the military in the 60 seconds, but was turned down due to a medical condition and the fact his eyesight was not great. So he focused on saving whatever he thought he needed. He told me many times it was better to have something and not need it, than need it and not have it. Our area suffered from numerous power outages in winter due to heavy winds and storms. So having gasoline and propane for heaters and generators was a must. All these saving habits became my own as time went on. Because it was better to need this stuff rarely, than not have it at all. Of course there was the HOA bothering us. But that's its own other story. The problem is, about 5 years back my grandma died suddenly. And my grandpa was heartbroken. He also went about a year and a half later. Pretty much everything they owned was willed to me. Their savings, their house, their vehicles, their stuff, everything. The house was long paid off, and Grandpa knew how to keep up with its maintenance. In fact, after Grandma died he kind of doubled down on renovating the place. He had the roof redone, the house was repainted by us inside and out, and we fixed a lot of little things. Grandpa's neighbor George even came by to help redo the plumbing. Ironically, the HOA was rather happy with these changes, because the house didn't look rundown anymore. One morning I was fixing breakfast and my grandpa never came downstairs. You couldn't keep the man from his bacon. So I went to check on him. And he wasn't moving. I called 911 and paramedics came. Only to tell me he'd passed in his sleep. My parents made Grandpa's funeral a shit show. They didn't bother to show up for Grandma's. They were too busy. And at Grandpa's funeral they didn't seem to grieve at all. My sister also showed up wearing a brightly colored designer dress, which I wasn't happy about as it was a church clothes-only function. I noticed my parents repeatedly whispering to each other and glaring at me whenever I looked at them. Come to find out at the will reading that my parents knew that they'd been disinherited long ago for their treatment of me. And they thought it extremely unfair I got everything. They threatened to sue me to contest the will. And I got repeated calls and messages from my father, mother and sister telling me I needed to do the right thing and give my father what was supposed to be his. I told them all to flake off in far more unsavory words. My parents ended up taking me to court to challenge the will. But the judge ruled in my favor after seeing the will and hearing us both out. So it wasn't a long, drawn-out legal battle. The judge even looked at my parents with absolute disgust after seeing the will and hearing about their mistreatment of me in my childhood. He called my father a terrible parent, and that my grandparents were right to disown him. My father just hung his head in silence, but he made sure to stop me outside the courtroom and tell me I was always the biggest mistake of his life. And that if he could go back in time, he'd make sure I never existed. He should have been a football star. And instead he has to wear a name tag for a 9 to 5. I told him that mistake or not, Grandma and Grandpa could see what kind of nasty person he was. I didn't ask to be born. And the only real love I ever got was from my grandparents. And he was no father of mine anymore. I got a few more threatening and harassing phone calls, as well as some letters from my parents, all demanding money among other things. But over time they just stopped because I completely stonewalled them. Never responded to the emails or letters, and I stayed silent during the phone calls. A few times I just left the phone sitting on the counter with them ranting till they realized I wasn't listening. Aside from not getting the house or money, my parents seemed particularly irked they could not even get a rise out of me. But I was prepared to go to war against them. And they knew it. So in the end they just left me alone. From what I know looking at Facebook the past decade, my sister tried to get into modeling, got married, had 2 kids, got divorced, and is currently unhappily working a job she feels is beneath her. My mother currently works retail and is also vocal about her disdain of it. Like my father, she peaked in high school. She was a cheerleader back then, and even had her old uniform framed on the wall. My father has pretty much had the same job for 25 years. He must be good at it if he's still doing it. As for me, well, I'm in my late 30s now. And I live pretty much debt-free in a nice neighborhood. I haven't really had a girlfriend since high school. And I've had little motivation to ever have another relationship. But loneliness gets to everyone. So maybe I'll try to find someone soon. Not many are in the financial position I'm in at my age. Single, paid-off house, 2 vehicles and a decent amount in the bank. I guess I could aim to be a stepfather. That might be more my speed. Comments. I'm so sorry your parents treated you like you were unwanted and worthless. Even if they didn't choose to become pregnant, they chose to have you. They should have loved and cared for you. The best revenge against your parents is to be happy with your life. Your parents are POS. They ruined their own life by being selfish. You were just a child. I'm glad you had great grandparents in your life. They were proud of you. Block your parents and sister. In regards of loneliness, the truth is, you need to be happy and love yourself first. You can be alone as long as you don't feel lonely. If you feel something is stopping you from connecting with other people, maybe try therapy. After all you have been through, it may have impacted you more than you think. Enjoy your day. Maybe find a hobby. Maybe go on a trip. Keep looking forward. Wish you the best, OP. I'm sorry your parents were / are such horrid people, and I'm glad you had your grandparents. Keep living your life. You never know where it will take you. My uncle was single until he was 45 and married my aunt. She was a widow with 2 kids and they had 2 more after that. They've been together for 45 years now. Wishing you all the best, kiddo. Much love, Granny. Yes, it's a child's fault because 2 dumb arse teenagers didn't bother to use protection nor contraception. OP, you're stronger than many of us. Good for you. Be sure to get yourself a will. Leave your home, cars, money, etc. to anyone other than your parents. It would be so much better to leave stuff to friends or charities instead of them. If you have a will, it will be harder for them to contest it. I would include the reasons they are not getting anything in the will. Good luck. Tragic story, but I'm glad you got through it on top. Normally I wouldn't say people deserve the life they got, but your parents and sis definitely do. I mean, it's just pure karma for them. They shot themselves in the foot too many times and thought somehow they'd still be able to walk. Good on you for refusing them and living your own life. Nothing wrong with being single, but if you want a relationship, by all means go for it. Best of luck to you, OP. Edit. If multiples of this were posted, I'm sorry. My connection went wild for a sec and wouldn't send this message. Subscribe and hit the bell button for the best Reddit stories available.